So I'm going to say, the people who aren't here, you're really missing out on some super cool stuff, because we've got Sandy Heydt with us now, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Space Perspective. And I was actually just saying this to Sandy when we're sitting down listening to Sarah's talk, is as a former marketer, and pardon my French, but I think she's got the fucking coolest job in the world. I mean, how cool is it to be marketing space perspectives and travel to space? But not only that, it's making space accessible to everyone. Like, who here wants to go to space? Yeah, exactly. We all do. So I want to welcome Sandy onto stage as she's going to share the story of Space Perspectives with us. And I'm sure by the end of this, we're all going to want to be signing up to travel.
You will rise, floating to the edge of space until all you feel is wonder. A thrilling 6-hour journey carried by decades of aerospace expertise. A view few have experienced. A journey that will change you. Welcome aboard. Space Perspective.
Imagine a world where we all truly understood that we are in this together, that we are a member of one human family. Imagine a world where we all truly understood that this planet Earth sustains us and supports everything we do. Imagine a world where the differences between us disappeared, and when we looked into the eyes of another, we saw ourselves. And imagine a world where we cared as much for others as we do ourselves. Just imagine. We all know that we live on one single solitary planet. But does that inform everything you do every day? How often do you think about this on a daily basis? I think about it every day. It has long been my passion, and now it gets to be my work. I see a world not fractured by the divisions between people, not poverty, no war, and no hatred. I see a world as seen from space, looking down at the thin blue line of our atmosphere and knowing that what happens on one side of our planet affects the other. Every single thing you do every day is of huge importance. I've always spent my career trying to make a better world. At the beginning of my career, I focused on the individual as a therapist and then a leader of people. Then I focused on groups as a change agent in organizations and working with groups of people. And now the finale, I get to focus on the world. That's the point, isn't it? And it's something that you and I can do together. I made some interesting life and career choices along the way that have informed exactly what I'm doing right now. I was raised in a family of educators, theologians, and helping professionals. That was my worldview. I happened to be a competitive athlete with an eye towards the Olympic Games. My degrees are in social work and psychology. I loved the work. I counseled abusive parents, substance abuse patients, and people that were suffering from debilitating spinal cord injuries. I was certain that this was the path that my life was going to take. But then something happened. There's a little angel that lives on my shoulder and sometimes speaks to me in my ear. Do you all have that? Maybe you call it your gut. Maybe you call it a voice. I don't know. But sometimes this person talks to me, and something happened. The mental health clinic that I worked at had a director that resigned, and I took over as the director of the clinic. That totally shifted what I was doing. What did I know about financial reports and scheduling and revenue and profit and loss? But I learned it, and it sucked me in. I never looked back, and I moved forward in a different path. I became a person that worked with organizations that were failing and that were not thriving. I got into sales and marketing because it was intuitive to me. I had a business for 10 years where I consulted on culture change and turning businesses around. For those of you that are in revenue generation, you know how challenging and stressful that work can be. But I always focused on the individual because I knew if we could get teams to work together, that the revenue would come. I might not have always aligned with all the values of every company that I worked with, but I knew if I focused on the individuals and the teams, that the culture would change. And I was sure that I could leave some secret empathy and compassion dust on my way out. Before I joined Space Perspective, I got very interested in the social justice movement in the United States. And I was going to do a 2-year Buddhist training program focusing on changing in that area. But there I was, hiking, and my phone rang. Somebody said, "Hey, Sandy, what are you doing?" I heard about a company that's taking people to space in a pressurized capsule powered by a high-performance space balloon. And they are looking for a leader of their experienced team and to head sales, marketing, and branding. Well, after I brought myself up from the trail, laughing, thinking it was the funniest thing I ever heard of, guess what happened? The angel on my shoulder whispered into my ear and said, "You better have a look at this." And I did. I researched what was happening in space travel and tourism right now, and I also researched the people that had co-founded Space Perspective. After a 3-week consulting gig with them, I drank the Kool-Aid and said yes. I packed up my dog, my 2 bikes, and my kayak, and I moved to Florida. So who are these people that I joined in this journey? The co-founders of our company are Jane Pointer and Tabor McCallum, and they have long shared a vision for a better world. Many of you might know about Biosphere 2 in Arizona in the United States. It was designed to help realize future human interplanetary colonization, and that's a mouthful, and it would reveal that understanding how to live on another planet would help us understand how to live on our own. Jane and Tabor were designers, collaborators, and 2 of the 8 people that went into the biosphere for 2 years. It was while training, preparing, and inside the biosphere itself that they knew they wanted to create a company that would someday offer to the world a new perspective in order to make lasting positive change. That is Jane down there with the sweet potatoes, and she will tell you she ate so many sweet potatoes in those 2 years that she turned orange. So how might they achieve this goal? Why? Take people to space, of course. This offers a perspective-changing experience that, however it manifests itself for any particular person, it will change their life forever. Yes, space exploration has great scientific value, and we know that there were amazing innovations and discoveries that have happened over the years from the space program. Many of those innovations have saved a lot of lives and certainly make our lives easier every day. But the real purpose and value behind space exploration is ultimately Earth exploration. Exploration of who we are, how we live together on our one precious planet. What is our global view, then, of the value of space travel for humanity? Imagine a world where millions of human beings experience what astronauts do. Looking at the thin blue line of our planet, looking down on our Earth from the cosmos. By all accounts, this is a life-changing and profoundly moving experience that changes them forever. Anisha Ansari, who is the first female space tourist, said it best. The actual experience exceeds all expectations and is something that's hard to put into words. It sort of reduces things to a size that you think everything is manageable. All these things that may seem big and impossible, we can do this. Peace on Earth? No problem. It gives people that type of energy, that type of power, and I have experienced that. The opportunity to expand one's perspective in this way will have astonishing implications for our Earth and our one human family. At my company, we believe that global challenges require a global view, and this is exactly why I decided to join Jane and Tabor and the rest of the amazing team. Edgar Mitchell on Apollo 14 came back and said, "You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it." How many of you have ever heard of the overview effect? This was coined by Frank White in 1982, and Frank, we're happy to say, has a seat on one of our early capsules. He described this effect as the profound reaction of seeing Earth from outside its atmosphere. This cognitive shift is what astronauts say is one of the most meaningful moments of their lives. From space, national boundaries vanish, and the differences between us do as well. I love what Sultan bin Salman Al Saud said. He and 3 other people from 3 other countries went to space together as civilians. The first day or two, we all pointed out our 4 countries. The third or fourth day, we were pointing to our continents. By the fifth day, we were aware of only one Earth. The chance to live my life marching towards this goal, I'm really glad that I signed up. So, I mentioned earlier that providing the opportunity for as many people as possible to experience this profound and life-altering journey is why our company exists. So, what is the experience like on Spaceship Neptune, and how are we different? We use no rockets or rocket fuel. Our passengers will not experience high G-forces. There is no special training and no special physical requirements. Boarding Spaceship Neptune is as easy as boarding an airplane. We're very proud of our commitment to sustainability. Our capsules are reusable, and the space balloons are recycled. Spaceship Neptune will initially launch from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and eventually from around the world. This you see in front of you is the flight path. Our explorers are escorted to space in the capsule, powered by a space balloon. The capsule holds 8 passengers plus a pilot. We have Wi-Fi, a bathroom, and the all-important bar. We travel at the roaring speed of 12 miles an hour and reach 30 kilometers. The ascent takes 2 hours. Imagine leaving in the dark night sky and slowly ascending to space, where then you will see the most spectacular sunrise of your life. Once you reach apogee, 30 kilometers, you float for another 2 hours. Really able to take in the experience, no rushing. You can see 450 miles in one direction, and the capsule has 360-degree views with wide windows. Then you would slowly descend at another 12 miles an hour until you splash down gently in the ocean where you're met by the recovery ship. The comfortable, accessible, and gentle 6-hour journey is clearly redefining space travel. What better way to look out at your home, Earth, and think about what the astronauts do. And whatever that experience is for you, you get to own it. Unlike those exciting rockets that blast off into space, where the entire experience is about 14 minutes, unless you're on Inspiration 4, where you get to orbit the world for 3 days, our experience is long-lasting. Nicole Stott, an ISS astronaut, said, "We have this connection to Earth. I mean, it's our home. I don't see how you can come back and not in some way be changed." You can't take that lightly. But I think my favorite quote of all is from Bill Anders, an astronaut on Apollo 8, who said, "We came all this way to explore the moon, and the most important thing we discovered was Earth." It is that experience that we at Space Perspective want to offer and make accessible to as many people as possible. I didn't really believe it would be possible for me to fly among the stars. I thought that was just reserved for astronauts who spent their whole life training, who were at the absolute top of their game, physically and intellectually. But now, space is opened up. We can all fly among the stars, because my company is going to take us there. So I ask you today, are you concerned about the fractures in our society, in our world? Do you want to do something about it? Do you want to join a community of people who can and do have the power to? Then come and join me. I guarantee you will have a reckoning. But I'm not done with you. What if you can't go to space? What if you don't go? Can you still have the power to make a change? Do you ever have that angel on your shoulder whispering in your ear, telling you to go down a different path or suggesting that you think of something in a different way? I challenge you to listen to that. Each of us can have the space perspective whether or not we go. Each of us can do more. So this is my message of unity for you today. I'd like to speak to any of you after, if you have any questions, and talk about how we might together make this a better and more healthy world for all of us. And now, I would like to satisfy your curiosity by answering some questions. But first, I would like to have the last slide, which is a photograph taken from our recent test flight from 30 kilometers. And this is exactly what you would see.
Thank you, Sandy. So my curiosity is definitely piqued, especially as you started to frame it up and just thinking about the perspective, and I just imagined myself as so small on Earth, and then having that perspective of our world and what difference it would bring to my life and what things it might change. So for you, how has working on this project shifted your perspective?
I think what it's done for me is help me realize that we do live on one planet, all of us together. And we are one human family. And while I used to say that I knew that and I understood that, when I hear and study what the astronauts say, and when I think about seeing the Earth from so high and seeing it, many astronauts say that it looks fragile to them, and that when they come back, they feel they must do something for it. I feel like it's even energized me more to make sure that what I do in my daily life is walking the walk.
So when you started telling the story, and also I would say if anybody has any questions, if you can just put up your hand. Okay, we've got a question right there. Excellent. And then another one back there, and then there. I do have one quick question, though, if I can ask first. When you were describing the journey at first and you said there was no G-force, I was like, I'm out. That sounds like so much fun. But then when you started to describe that there's a bar, I'm like, I'm back in. And I love the idea of creating a comfortable experience, but also that it's a 6-hour journey. But you and I were briefly talking just around that you can reserve a spot and the cost to reserve a spot and that it's refundable. So I will be definitely getting on that after we're done here. But my question to you is this, is like, how much would it cost me if I did want to go? So I know it's a $1,000 deposit, but what is the actual cost?
So we call it the market-beating price of $125,000 per person.
Is that Canadian or US dollars?
That's US dollars. But here's the thing. It's possible to reserve a seat for $1,000 refundable and then save like hell for a couple of years so that you can go. But we do know that the price might go up a bit in the future because there is such demand. We have more than 450 seats already sold in just 5 months. But the first year is already sold out. And the first year, we're going to take about 25 flights. And each year, we will get more and more. And eventually, after not very long, we will be taking up 500 flights a year from all over the world.
Amazing.
So I do like to compare one more thing about the price. So I'm loving all the rockets. Trust me, I think they're great. The experience there would cost you about $450,000, and the experiences last between 11 and 14 minutes. So I don't know. I think the cost-benefit ratio is pretty good for space perspective, but I am the marketing person.
I think the cost-benefit ratio is actually really good, and if I'm thinking about it in euros, it's only 70,000 euros.
Right.
Like only, yeah, I know exactly. Start saving now. Arnaud, you had a question.
Well, actually, a part of it was already answered, was also the cost, but now that I know the costs, so I believe you said you wanna do this for millions of people, and so $70,000, millions of people. So is there the plan to make it really affordable?
Yes, it is. So the further we get into this and the more flights we send, the less expensive it will become, and that is the goal. This is not about pure profit and making a ton of money. This is about getting the most people possible up into space. We already do some programs with Space for Humanity and Higher Orbits, the Innovation Forum with Blue Callum. So we're going to do a lot of things to try to get a lot of people available on the flights that may not be able to afford the entire amount.
Great. And I think we had some questions in the middle over there, correct? There was one there, and then did I think I see somebody else's hand, just so we know where the next person's coming from? Okay, perfect.
Hi. So I would be interested in, you said the pod was reusable and the balloon was recycled. So does that mean that it only works one time and then it gets recycled again and there's a new balloon for every flight?
There is a new balloon for every flight.
Okay, I can't imagine how big one balloon is. So have you any correlation or some example of how big one balloon is?
Oh, yes. So imagine the size of a football field. When fully inflated, it's the size of a football field. Yeah, that's a pretty big balloon. And it's made of polyethylene with high tensile material throughout. So these balloons, these space balloons, are very strong and actually have been used by NASA and other organizations for decades. So this space balloon technology is not new. What is new is actually taking this many people underneath one.
Well, thank you. Regarding the vehicle, what was the main challenge developing the vehicle? Because obviously, a balloon is not that much complicated than a rocket. And I guess you started the company in 2019, and the first commercial launch is planned around 2024, I think. So what was the main problems getting that done? Is it because of regulation? Because it not sounds that of a complicated vehicle. And the second question is, what is the so-called propellant you're going to pump in the balloon to reach that? I think it's not that much lower orbit. No?
So I can answer the second part because I remember it, and maybe you can re-ask the first part. But the gas that's used in the space balloon is hydrogen. And it is the gas of choice for decades with balloonists. And it's extremely safe for use in space balloons. And there's been no reported incident using hydrogen in a space balloon. You may be talking about an issue with hydrogen in another airship. that might come to mind. But that was not supposed to have used hydrogen. That was supposed to have used helium.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, your first question was related to the fact that the journey started in 2019, yet the first test is going to be in 2024. So what hurdles have happened along the way, correct?
Oh, so...
And why hasn't there been, I'm going to say, maybe a faster acceleration?
Yeah. So
I'm going to add that in.
The company was formed in 2020. You were close. And the first funding round occurred in June of 2020. So the first funding round is then what allowed Jane and Tabor to start building the company with the engineers and then the marketing team. So we just had a second round of financing complete just yesterday. And so we're going from about 30 people to more than 100 in the next 6 months on our staff. So it's fascinating for me, being a non-engineer, to be in those meetings. Like, sometimes I'll text my friend and I'll say, I was just in a meeting designing a spacecraft. What did you do today? But so we're not experiencing any challenges other than now we can staff up because we got our funding round complete. Our first piloted test flights will be in 2023. We'll have more test flights next year without a pilot, and I'm going to be on one of those flights for sure.
So do we have any, I think we've got another question, but while we're waiting for him to get the microphone. So you started your talk around the impact that we can have in humanity and challenging all of us to think about the impact that we have in the world and how we can, I'm going to use a different quote, but to be the change in the world that we want to see. And I hear things like $125,000, raising funding, and we all know space travel is not cheap, and there's being billions of dollars spent on this right now. And when you think about how many problems there are here on Earth, what's your perspective on the money that's being spent to put people into space when we could actually do so much good with that?
Yeah, and that is a good point, and it's one that I think is fair to talk about. So when NASA went out of the space flight business a number of years ago, the private sector had to pick it up. And the private sector picked it up, the billionaires basically, who had enough money to fund the incredible research and the costly research that's needed to take people to space and to explore the universe. So I think that space exploration can make a difference on Earth. And so I'm in support of it. It's one of the reasons why we will also have a lot of research payloads on our flights, where we're planning to bring the price down. And say what you might about the billionaires that have been flying this summer. They are doing a lot to open up the research and the innovations of space. And they've also managed to raise a lot of money for some charities and medical organizations on Earth. So I applaud their efforts.
So we've got time for one last question. The gentleman over there.
Yeah, thank you. So you said the spacecraft hosts 8 people plus a pilot. I suppose that this is quite a close calculation in terms of rate, as 8 doesn't seem like a lot. So is there still some leeway in terms of building like ships with more capacity in the future, or is pretty much the possibility in that area pretty much covered, like with, I don't know, better materials for the balloon or lighter materials or whatever?
I think for now, certainly 8 plus the pilot is the plan. I know that there has been tremendous research done by Tabor and his team even before this company was officially started. So we're going to stick with 8 and the pilot for now, but we have all sorts of ideas for the future, partly like how long can we really stay up there? We've already had people purchase entire capsules for their friends and family, and we're still waiting to book the first wedding, if anybody's interested. First wedding in space.
I love that. Thank you, Sandy, for your time. And I'm like, birthday party. That could be really
Birthday
fun.
party, yeah.
My 80th birthday party, you're in. Anyways, thank you so much for your time today and for your talk. Who here still wants to go to space? Oh, yes, sorry, okay, well, one more question because you've done such an awesome job today.
Thank you. Quick question. So the balloon is reusable and recyclable, but how much energy does it take to build the whole thing?
The balloon is recyclable but not reusable. The capsule is reusable. The answer to your question about how much energy, if you want to email me, I will get the answer from our engineers, because I am not the engineer.
But I think that's a great question, and I like where you're going. It's like, what is the real carbon footprint? Because a lot of times we look at the waste versus actually understanding the full supply
Right.
chain.
So it's probably a lot of energy used, I guess, right?
I'm sorry?
It's probably a lot of energy used to produce these things, right?
I didn't hear the...
It is probably a lot of energy used to produce these things, right?
Yes, there is a lot of energy, sure, for sure.
Thank you.